Stay with that story. It's 3 days since the catastrophic Joburg CBD fire that claimed 76 lives. In fact, some families are yet to identify loved ones after more than 60 of them have been burnt beyond recognition. Now, last night, authorities had to convince some to go to shelters. Many have been sleeping on the street, hoping to, in some way, salvage what's left of their belongings. We'll get an update now from our reporter who's on the ground, Pule Letshwiti-Jones. A very good morning. How is the situation on the ground right now?
Well, William, right now it's still a bit quiet. The only people we're seeing is law enforcement, of course, police, JMPD, and of course SAPS officials and private security, as you can see on shot. This scene has been cordoned off as well. Yesterday, you could navigate yourself or your way into the scene, but today security is a bit tight and a bit strict as well in terms of going inside. We are told that members of the emergency services unit, the search and rescue team, will again come today and conduct an operation to try and find or see if there could be any other deceased body parts inside this building which was gutted by, of course, the fire as well. But as far as we understand, you're correct to say, out of the 76 that we now know that have died, 62 of them, of the bodies rather, which were found, were burnt beyond recognition. Now, the challenging part here, of course, has been for the families that have been trying to navigate their way through this mission as well, which would include, trying to see if these are their family members who are involved in this tragic incident. And yesterday, during a press briefing, officials and, of course, the Minister of Health, Joe Phatla, said that they would use DNA testing, which would be required to identify the deceased. They would also be subjected to the Lodox system, which is sort of like an X-ray that they use for bodies to try and remember where, or rather, they could be linked to their family members who are searching for them. We also now understand that the government said that it will have to bury the bodies burnt beyond recognition if they cannot be positively identified through DNA analysis. So those are some of the challenges that have been witnessed by the state as well. But there's also another element to the story. We're being told that some of those who were residing in this building were taken to the shelters. However, some have since left the shelters and ran away from the shelters as a result of fearing that they could be probed by officials from Home Affairs, as some, we were told, do not have the proper documentation as well. So that has been a problem. But of course, the state has said that they will be working together between the Department of Health, Social Development, amongst other government entities, to try and assist those who've been affected here, whether South Africans, whether foreign nationals, whether undocumented foreign nationals. The Minister of Health, Joe Phatla, said they will only then look into these finer details after this process, of course, has been completed. I just wanted to take a listen to what the Minister had to say around this whole issue of saying that they will be working together as government to assist the affected victims.
Definitely, this is a tragedy and a crisis. So, I mean, we don't have authority to say the immigration laws of the country should be set aside. But in the interest of resolving the tragedy, we'll work together. Health, police, Home Affairs, we all working together, social development, the whole of government, we will work together to solve this issue. And then the issues in terms of whether people have papers will come later. So we will want to encourage those who have, who know that people who demised in this tragedy, they must not really put in the forefront the issue of the fear, because that's not really the main issue here. It's just to get this resolved so that those who have demised, the remains can be connected with their families and have closure. And then the issues about, documentation with our colleagues in Home Affairs, they will process those but we're not going to say because you've come forward, then say the police must arrest you because you are illegal. That will not really be helpful.
Of course, if you are just joining us, it's 8 minutes after 6. It's the first hour of the weekend edition of the South African Morning on the Saturday. On the ground with us, checking out the latest update in as far as the fire and the blaze that has already claimed 76 people in Marshalltown in downtown Johannesburg. Pule, we know that some people are injured and some, in fact, have succumbed to those injuries, bringing the death toll up to about 76. Do we know how many are still injured? Do we have those figures?
Well, there's still a lot that's who are quite injured. Well, last time we checked, there was just over 40 people who were injured. And the latest figure as well was as a result of 2 people who succumbed to their injuries, bringing the death toll to 76 as well, which is also quite alarming and concerning. What I can tell you is that when I spoke to an eyewitness on Friday evening, just after President Cyril Ramaphosa had his press conference here, he actually described how one lady actually had to throw her 2 children outside the window, who were then caught by people who were on the ground, just to try and save their lives. The woman then tried to escape through this building, which was on flames, and jumped down. And what happened is that she broke her leg. So those are just some of the horrific, incidences that were detailed here by some of the eyewitnesses. Some were told were using, a fabric to tie into knots to escape through the windows as well. If I just step out of shot, just to give you a bit of a detail of what you're seeing on screen, is an example of how people were scrambling to try and make their way out. It was chaotic, and there were people were screaming inside, and there just wasn't any direction, we were told. The other reason, as a result of what we're seeing on screen, is because like the emergency services unit spokesperson for Johannesburg, Robert Mlaudzi, described, he said that just have an image of an informal settlement inside this building. That's how it really was coordinated by those who are residing here. The corridors were divided by cut boxes and gates, and as well, it is really quite something that he said he had never seen before. And as a result, some of the fire emergency exit doors and of course passages could not be used because of how this building had been occupied by informal people, traders, invaders, and of course those who were also saying that they were just living in here as a result of paying rent as well. So in terms of injuries, the minister, of course, has detailed how some broke their limbs, some broke their spinal cords, legs, hands, and the description really was quite horrifying in the sense that it gives you detail of how people were just trying to escape in order to save their lives as well. I just wanted to listen to what the minister had to say yesterday when he spoke about how people have been injured as well, the people who are residing here at this particular building.
Patients who are still in the hospitals, in the about 5 hospitals here around Johannesburg. It's mainly smoke inhalation. And then, of course, the bigger portion is broken limbs. Broken limbs, including, in some cases, 2 patients who had broken spine, broken back, which affect the spine. So some of, fortunately it doesn't look like many, but it's still 1 too many, two too many of the broken spines. The large majority, it's broken long bones, what you call, so in other words, arms and legs.
Right, Pule, obviously there has been a lot of blaming between the departments. Obviously, if you take into account the city of Joburg saying that it is another officer's responsibility to ensure that these hijacked buildings are looked into with more scrutiny. Obviously, the president was there as well on Thursday evening and was briefed by all these departments. What is the latest regarding who's responsible for what and what needs to happen moving forward?
Well, as far as we are concerned, just before we get into that, I'm just going to ask my colleague Tam Sangma to show you as well some of the arrival of law enforcement agencies as well. There's about 4 JMPD vehicles here arriving on scene. I did tell you earlier on that the scene was cordoned off, and you can see people have been told to either to take different routes as well and not to use this route, which is now a crime scene. As far as you understand, yesterday Robert Malawuti said that this scene would then be handed over to the South African Police Service, where then they would start conducting their investigations to try to get the root cause as to what could have been the problem to the building, to the fire actually being, to this building being engulfed into flames, to be precise. Also, the police are expected to be here, we're being told, during the course of the day in their numbers. Right now, we're only seeing just about 2 police vehicles as well. I spoke to one officer in the morning who detailed that so far it's been quiet. No one has tried to make their way into this building. Yesterday, when we spoke to some of the residents who were living in this building, they were telling us that they don't want to go to any shelter. They just want to get their personal belongings from the building, and then they'll make their way out and see how they can make their way forward. But this joint operation from private security, JMP, and of course SAPS has been quite strict. It is strengthened, and there are now numbers. As you can see on screen, there's still a bit of a conduct as to what will be happening next. We're expecting more law enforcement officials to come here. Yesterday we did see the city manager and other officials from the city of Johannesburg making their way here to actually try and comfort clues as to what could be the next step in the right direction in resolving the issue around fixing this building. There's still a lot of discussion, William, around whether this building will have to be rehabilitated, if they will have to demolish it, or what will they do with this building. Ironically, what we are seeing here on screen, just next to this building, is a building which of course was built by the city. We are told it's for low cost householders who cannot afford expensive buildings, and just next to it was a demolished building. So it does go to show you that the city still has to do a lot in terms of rehabilitating some of these buildings as well, which are really safe for residents of Johannesburg. So that'll be quite an important element today, just to get a sense of what will happen next in terms of this building. We also know that it used to be a heritage site as well, but also it was a building which housed victims of gender-based violence. There was a lease agreement between that NGO and the city of Johannesburg around 2014 as well. But also what we're also expecting to hear is around the issue of the demolishing, or rather the rehabilitating of buildings around the city of Johannesburg. SAPS confirming that there's around 600 derelict and of course decayed buildings in the city of Johannesburg, and this is something the Metro will have to look into as to how they can rehabilitate some of these buildings. I must say, this is not only an issue of Johannesburg. Just yesterday we saw a report as well by one of our colleagues, Letwim Mdluli, in KZN as well, in the eThekwini municipality, where Mayor Kaunda was saying that it's a problem as well in Durban, which is quite a key metro in South Africa, where we are seeing people invading some of these buildings. In the city of Tshwane as well, it's also an issue. If you go to Kurleni in Germiston and Boksburg, it's also quite a concern. So it does show, like the president said, this was of course a wake-up call, and that the issue of property laws and of course bylaws needs to be revisited as to how metros can work along those laws and ensure that they look into these concerning matters around property in their cities.
Pule, thank you so much. We will check in with you a little later.